Hey, everybody, we're back. Welcome, welcome, welcome. So glad to be here. My health seems to be cooperating. I no longer am waking up in the mornings with a sore throat, and that means I can stream for all of you. It's so good to be back. So good to be back. We got plenty of great, important things to talk about tonight. So hit that like button. Make sure you hit the subscribe button. Make sure you hit the notifications bell. Let's have a good show. And away we go.
Of the American century. I say that the century on which we are entering can be and must be the century of the common man.
A radical redistribution of economic power.
I mean, we know that racism is just a byproduct of capitalism. Everything would be all right if everything was put back in the hands of the people.
We need a government that will make sure Americans are taken care of and organize the economy to serve the people, not the profits of a wealthy few.
We now have the techniques and the resources to get rid of poverty.
We got to start getting out there with the people.
Get out of the movement and get to the masses.
We need a government of action. Welcome, everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I am so glad to be here with all of you tonight. It's a lovely, lovely evening. It's good to hear when you're gone for a little bit, just a little bit, just a wee bit of time, like they say in Ireland. And you're gone for just a short amount of time. And people already miss you. That's sweet. It shows that we're doing something special here, because what we're doing here is very much a community effort. These streams are not just me talking into my camera. I could do that all by myself and upload it afterwards, but I'm doing it live with you because you all are part of the conversation. I'm reading the chat. I spend the whole second half of the show answering your super chat questions. We have running jokes about unnamed diet beverage. We have catchphrases about out of the movement to the masses, government of action. Yeah, we're doing good stuff here. So hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the notifications bell. Make sure you do all three of those things. Tweet this out. Invite your friends to come join us here on Saturday night to have a conversation about the world and socialism and anti-imperialism and all of that important stuff. So the way we do things here is I give opening remarks, comments about what it is I want to talk about, etc. I do my opening remarks. Then after that, then we do the roll call. We find out who it is on the other side, who's on the other side of the camera, who's watching. We find out who's watching at home. It's always a very, very diverse audience, I must say. And then after that, then I answer super chat questions for the rest of the night. So just like right now, someone has sent a super chat question. Look at that. And someone sent a super chat question. And so what I'm doing is I'm now writing down, or I'm typing down their super chat question. Oh, goodness gracious. Now I got to open a whole new window because things are being weird. And I'm writing their super chat question down. And then that will be the first question in the second half of the show. So if there's something you want me to talk about in the second half of the show, the best thing for you to do is send me a super chat right now. Send me a super chat. I will write down your question. And in the second half of the show, I will do my best to give you an answer. I try to answer every super chat that comes in. Every so often, somebody super chats something that's, I can't get into. I just can't even address it. But for the most part, I try to give you an answer. Now, to be fair, it's not always the answer that you're looking for. Sometimes I just say, I don't know who that is, right? I'll just be honest. I'm not going to bullshit at you. I get people who send me super chats and they're like, hey, Caleb, what's your opinion of... And, if you did that, there's various people on the internet that if you said that to, they would go, I have very strong opinions about... Well, I'm not going to do that. If you ask me, about, and I don't know what it is, I'm not going to answer it. I'm just going to say, I'm sorry, good sir, but I do not know who it is. I'm just going to say, I don't know who it is. But within reason, if you ask me my opinion about something that I do know about, I will answer it. So that's the way the cookie crumbles here. That's the way this rolls. First, the opening remarks, then the roll call, and then the super chat questions. That's the way our show works. So happy Saturday night, everybody. Tomorrow is Sunday. And a few business announcements. We got it's not just one or two business announcements we've got going on here. This is like a real big business announcement thing. First business announcement. We are having a live event. Let me repeat that. We are having a live IRL event. And you can register to be part of the live IRL event. Writing down another super chat. We are having a live IRL event that is taking place. It is taking place on February 19th. There's a big anti-war rally happening in Washington, D.C. We'll be there. CPI will be well represented. We are official sponsors of that anti-war rally. And then after the anti-war rally is over, doors open at 6 o'clock at a hotel very close to where the protest ends, very close to the Lafayette Park in front of the White House. Near there, not exactly there, but very close, there is a hotel that we have rented where we're going to have a very awesome, very, very awesome evening reception, music, speeches, all kinds of great stuff, refreshments. So if you plan to be in DC on February 19th, by all means, sign up and register for the event. We'd love to have you there. We would love to have you there. Writing it down. All righty. Very good. Very, very good. Interesting super chats so far. So that's the first big announcement. February 19th, go to Washington, D.C. for the great, amazing anti-war rally. I'm going to have a lot to say about that in my opening remarks tonight. And then if you are going to be around in the evening, oh, there you go. Very good. Very good question. If you're going to be around in the evening, by all means, come on down. Come on down and join the Center for Political Innovation for our evening event. That's going to be awesome. Another bit of information that is very important, that is also worth sharing with you all. The Center for Political Innovation has just published a new book. We have just published a new book. It is not the first edition of this book that's ever been published. We published our own edition of Socialism, Utopian and Scientific by Frederick Engels. And it has an amazing cover designed by my friend Fox Green. And it has an introduction that I wrote that is 65 pages long, not a short introduction that I wrote. So if you would like to get a copy of the CPI edition of Socialism, Utopian, and Scientific, you can go ahead and do so. It is available on Amazon, and I am going to link you right now, the link where you can order a copy of our new edition of Socialism, Utopian, and Scientific. That book is now available. Cold War Channel, David Schroeder. So there you go. That is our edition of Socialism, Utopian, and Scientific, one of the most important books in the history of Marxism. We now have a CPI edition of the book that is available. You can order your copy today. So there you go. So there's that. The next announcement that we have is the Center for Political Innovation, the CPI. We are back in business. We are having weekly Zoom calls. We're having committee meetings, and we are having live events. We're going to have a national conference March 25th and 26th in Washington, D.C. Details coming soon. We are having an event February 19th, a reception after the anti-war protest. If you want to be part of our activities, become a member. Join the Center for Political Innovation. Join the CPI. We would love to have you as a member. And last business announcement, last but not least, if you like the work that this channel is doing, become a supporter on Patreon. That gets you access to patrons-only streams. That gets you your own copy of all the books that we publish. So join the Patreon supporting this channel. Lots of business announcements tonight, but that's all of them. We announced our event February 19th. Be there. We announced that we have a new book available, Socialism, Utopian, and Scientific, with a new introduction. We announced that you can join the Center for Political Innovation. We also announced that if you want to support the work that we're doing here, you can join on Patreon. So those are our business announcements for tonight. Whew, that was a lot. That was a lot, but luckily I have plenty of unnamed water beverage. So now I will get into my opening remarks. Balloon. 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 Balloon, 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 balloon. Big, big balloon. Be afraid of balloon. Balloon is coming. Balloon, 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 balloon. Balloon, 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 balloon. Balloon, 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 balloon. In case you didn't notice, there was a weather balloon spotted over the United States. First, it flew over the Aleutian Islands. We thought it was gone. But then it was spotted over Billings, Montana. And we said, oh no. And it drifted through the United States. And the American people held their breath. And then it drifted into South Carolina. And then luckily, Joe Biden, our great, amazing commander-in-chief, said, shoot it down, shoot her down. And the balloon went pop. And thus ended the epic legacy of the balloon. It's been a hard day to be an American. You think of days like 9/11, Pearl Harbor, January 6th. You think of that Star Wars Christmas special that epically bombed. You think about the night that Al Capone's safe was opened on national television by Geraldo Rivera, and it had nothing in it. Yes, yes, there are some moments that we are going to tell our grandchildren. Years from now, our grandchildren are going to say, Grandpappy, where were you when Joe Biden shot down the balloon? That's going to be us, actually. That's like an old person voice. They're going to say, Grandpa, where were you when Joe Biden shot down the balloon? We're going to say, well, kids, back when I was a kid, America was still a capitalist country, and the way the capitalists made lots of money was by having wars, you see, and so there was a weather balloon that blew into the United States, and that really wasn't a big deal, you see, kids. Wasn't really a big deal, but our government wanted us to be really afraid of China, see. And they wanted us to be really afraid of China and spend lots of money on tanks and bombs and weapons. So instead of ignoring this balloon like any rational government would do, we decided to have national panic attack over the balloon. And all kinds of Americans were comparing the balloon to Star Wars and Star Trek. And we had all kinds of memes on the internet of right-wing people waving their guns out in the air, pretending they was going to shoot this balloon. And it was quite a national tragedy. Luckily, Joe Biden shot down the balloon, and then he put on his sunglasses and bragged about shooting down the balloon. It was a great moment in American history. Yes. In the future, I do declare we Southerners are going to be very proud of what took place in South Carolina. You know, we kind of made up for being on the wrong side of the Civil War because it was near our shores over the Atlantic Ocean that Joe Biden, I do declare, shot down the balloon from China. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I'm having fun tonight, as you can tell. I'm doing my funny voice thing, and I'm having a great time. But honestly, you know, this whole thing is like, you know, I'm a news guy, and so I have to get on the air when news stories happen. And yeah, I mean, I've spent my weekend here reporting on this goddamn balloon. It's been really something special. 2 major Jewish immigration waves to China. Anyhow, wrote it down. But yeah, yeah, this balloon thing is really dumb. It's really, really dumb. There is nothing that this balloon could have spied on. They're calling it a spy balloon. That's the term they're using. They're referring to it as a spy balloon. That's what they're calling it. However, even Pentagon experts are saying there is nothing that this balloon could spy on that could not be already spied on by Chinese satellites. The Chinese government has satellites in the sky that can read license plates. So there is nothing, absolutely nothing, that this balloon could have gained access to. They're like, it flew close to nuclear sites. Oh boy. You know, this balloon was not weaponized in any way. It could not have harmed any civilians. It was drifting through the sky. And that was that. Weather balloon flew off course. Was drifting through the sky. And this is all so stupid. This is all really, 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 really stupid. This is really, really dumb. I mean, the whole thing is really, really dumb. And there is like the fact that they're turning this into a national incident. Do you know how many times this has probably happened and no one gave a shit? You know, I mean, there's probably been many, many times that this balloon, that a balloon from some other country flew into the United States and no one gave a shit. No one talked about it. It didn't even really make the news. And also, do you know how many times the United States has violated other countries' airspace, not with balloons, but with drones? Drones? Did you know this? That there are drones, like military drones that the United States flies into over other countries. Iran has shot down American drones before, not balloons, military drones. Right? Russia has dealt with drones that have been flown over into Russian airspace. My goodness. Just writing them down. Writing them down. You know, I mean, this whole thing is dumb. This whole thing is really, really, really dumb. And, you know, I mean, you know, a lot of people have pointed out, and I've pointed out, that, okay, so the story is China, they say it was accidental, even if it wasn't accidental, okay? Maybe they purposely did this. Let's have the worst faith interpretation. Let's pretend that Xi Jinping was sitting up in the Kremlin going, "Mwahaha, we shall say it was an accident, but it was no accident after all. We shall deploy a harmless balloon into America and cause panic among the American capitalist dogs." Let's imagine that that's what happened. All right, just for the sake of the doubt. For the sake of the argument, we are going to imagine that the most malicious, evil intent on the part of the Chinese leaders, that it was not an accident, that they sat there and maniacally plotted to unleash the balloon. And President Xi Jinping was sitting on his throne one day, and he turned to his assistant and said, "Assistant, unleash the balloon." And then, like, a trap door opened, you know, and the balloon like floated out as we heard like bum bum bum. You know, let's imagine that that's what happened. Just because, right? Just because we're having fun here tonight. Let's imagine it was the worst, most maniacal, malicious, intentional plot by China. And a weather balloon drifted into American territory through the Aleutian Islands, and then through Billings, Montana, and down through South Carolina, and into the Atlantic Ocean, where Joe Biden popped it. Let's imagine that happened, just for the sake, just for the sake of argument. It never touched the ground in the United States. There were no people on this balloon. It had no military weaponry. There was nothing that this balloon could have acquired in terms of knowledge that couldn't be acquired by a satellite. So there you go. Let me remind you that Nancy Pelosi, the Speaker of the House of the United States, who is third in line to be president, if something were to happen to Biden and Kamala Harris, she would have been president. Now it's the new guy, Kevin McCarthy. But the Speaker of the House of the United States got on an airplane and went into Chinese territory without the permission of the Chinese government. The Chinese government did not give her a visa, did not give her any permission. Nancy Pelosi, third in line to be president, got on a plane, flew to the island of Taiwan, got off the plane, did a photo op with the leaders of Taiwan, announced that she was engaging in some business deals with the leaders of Taiwan, and basically declaring war on China's computer chips. A whole provocation. And that's okay. That's totally fine, right? That's just, Nancy Pelosi went on a trip, right? Nancy Pelosi traveled. Yeah, she illegally went into Chinese territory. Sure, she flaunted U.S. law. U.S. law says we recognize one Chinese government. So if she's going to go to the island of Taiwan, she needs to ask permission from Beijing. Doesn't matter what the government on Taiwan says. She violates the American law that says it's illegal to go into other countries without permission of the U.S. government. She violates U.S. law. She violates the one China policy. She goes to the island of Taiwan in a blatant taunt and threat against the People's Republic, basically saying that, the USA is supporting efforts to separate China, break parts of China away from China. And that's totally okay. I mean, that's the U.S. government says that's fine, right? Yeah, sure. Our third in line to be president, our leader goes and violates Chinese territorial integrity, violates American law in order to do so, creates an international incident. There's, the whole of the Pacific region is put on military high alert because Nancy Pelosi felt this need to travel and taunt the government of Beijing. That's fine. But this weather balloon is not okay. This weather balloon, just that just crosses the line. Oh my God, Jack Probizik and all the Fox News conservatives, they weather balloon, right? I think it was Tyler, who's part of our community. He's got a great YouTube channel. Tyler, I think he's the one he edited the Simpsons Old Man Yells at Cloud and replaced it with Old Man Yells at Balloon. That's what happened here. This whole thing is unbelievably dumb. It is unbelievably dumb and stupid. And it is a psychological operation, I am convinced. They seized on this balloon to psych us up with the idea that China is a threat to us. Let me break this down for you all. Do you know how many overseas military bases China has? One. China has one overseas military base. It's in Djibouti, on the Horn of Africa. You know how many overseas military bases? You know how many overseas military bases Russia has? You know how many overseas military bases Russia has? Russia has 8 overseas military bases. 8 of them. 8. Do you know how many overseas military bases the United States has? Over 1,000. At least 800, probably over 1,000. So you're trying to tell me that China is a threat to global security? Well, Caleb, maybe they only have one overseas military base, but they did send a balloon. Oh God. You know why? And this is amusing. This is amusing to me. It's worth mentioning. Do you know why they waited to shoot down the balloon until it was over the Atlantic Ocean? You know why? Because if they had shot the balloon down on land, there's a good chance it could have fallen on somebody. And somebody could have gotten trapped under the balloon and suffocated. It was more dangerous to shoot down the fucking balloon than the balloon was. That's why they waited to shoot it down over the Atlantic Ocean, because it was more dangerous to shoot it down. That's how little of a threat it was. There was more of a threat posed by them shooting the balloon and the rubber falling on top of somebody and somebody getting stuck in the rubber and suffocating. Okay? And what are the chances of that happening? Not big, not huge, but it's possible. Could have happened. So there was more of a chance of the balloon falling on somebody and them suffocating than there was of this balloon actually harming anyone or doing anything. Try to process that. This balloon was safer in the air than on the ground. That's how non-dangerous this balloon was. Shooting it down was more dangerous than the goddamn balloon. This is the dumbest thing I've ever heard. It's unbelievable. Unbelievable. Unbelievably dumb. The whole thing is unbelievably stupid. And the worst part is that they expect us to fall for this. They really expect us, to shit our pants over this. They expect us to go, oh my God, hide in your basement, hide in your closet, buy a bunch of perishable food items because the balloon's coming. They expect it. I mean, they were trying their hardest. Yes. And that too. Now Joe Biden was out there in his sunglasses bragging about how he shot down the balloon. Like he's like a cowboy. He's got his sunglasses on. He's like, yeah, we shot it down. Yeah, I wanted to do it earlier, but we had to wait. I shot it down. It's like, good for you. You shot down a balloon. I mean, I don't even know what to say. I mean, that's his great epic moment, right? I mean, it's like, I mean, during the Obama administration, right? They had what was their slogan? It was like, Obama is dead, Detroit is still alive, which Detroit is totally not still alive. But that was their slogan. Like, Obama is dead, Detroit is still alive. So this is like what is it? The balloon is dead, but Nancy Pelosi is still alive. That'll be their new slogan. Balloon dead, right? You know what I mean? Like, I mean, this is so dumb. This is so dumb. Like, this is going to be. I think that was on there. Was it? Yeah, 2012 at the 2012 Democrat convention. They all had signs. Osama bin Laden dead, Detroit alive, right? So we'll have signs, balloon dead, Nancy Pelosi alive. That'll be our slogan. I mean, this is so stupid. This is really, really stupid. But catch this. This is the best part. Antony Blinken, the U.S. Secretary of State, was going to go on a diplomatic trip to China. He was going to go on a diplomatic trip to China and maybe try to like patch things up and not move closer to World War III. Well, he canceled the trip. Had to call it off. You know why? Balloon. No, I'm serious. That is the official reason that Antony Blinken canceled his trip to China. Was over the balloon. This balloon was such a big deal, apparently, that Antony Blinken, the U.S. Secretary of State, was going to go have a diplomatic visit to a very important country, the largest country in the world in terms of population, the second largest economy in the world. He was going to go and meet with them and talk about improving U.S. relations with them. But then this balloon, it drifted over America, and he was just like, oh no, I'm not meeting with those bastards. They're going to send balloons. You send a balloon into my backyard, I'm not meeting with you. No, there's some lines. Someone's got to draw a line somewhere. Someone's just got to draw a line in the sand and say, sure, USA can send Predator drones all over the world. Sure, the USA can invade sovereign countries like Iraq and kill millions of people. Sure, the USA can barricade China's economy, but then somebody sends a balloon, and no, you just can't have it. You just can't have it. You can't tolerate it. You cannot tolerate it. This is so stupid. This is so unbelievably stupid. And I hope I'm not the only person who can realize how stupid this is. I know all of you are watching and you all agree with me. And I appreciate you all agreeing with me. It's really, really good of you to do that. But please, talk to your relatives about it, and talk to your coworkers about it, and talk to your classmates about it, and don't let them get away with this. My God, we could have World War III over a stupid balloon. We could really have a world war over this. They are working to manipulate media, to psych people up, this is how evil they are, right? We could actually have a world war over this goddamn balloon. Cows in the field of Montana will have their privacy back. Yes, they will. Yes, they will. When those cows shit in the field, there will not be a Chinese weather balloon pervert watching them. Oh boy. Yeah, this is really something special. But anyway, I just wanted to get that out of my system. But I've got a couple other things I wanted to talk to you about tonight. Folks, February 19th is going to be a really, really important anti-war protest in Washington, D.C. And it's going to be very, very important. And do you know how I can tell that this anti-war protest is going to be really important? Because they're doing everything they can to wreck it. They are doing everything they can to wreck it. On Monday, I heard that Scott Ritter, a brilliant writer, former UN weapons inspector, a whistleblower, a dissident, Scott Ritter, he was disinvited to the march. So I was furious. So I tweeted out, I support Scott Ritter. And Scott Ritter, who I've never met before, he appreciated this, so he retweeted me tweeting that. Cool. After that, it got like, that tweet that was like almost 400 times that tweet was retweeted because so many people respect Scott Ritter and the work that he does. And then after that, Scott Ritter was re-invited. They backed down from their disinvitation of Scott Ritter, which is awesome. That was really badass. That was really cool. I'm really, really glad that happened. And I'm like, damn, feels good to be on the winning side for once, doesn't it? Right? I was still going to go to the protest. I was still going to, people were saying, well, you shouldn't go to the protest. No, we'll go. We'll go. It's still a really important protest. It's just a bummer that they would give in. And I also tweeted out, and this was my tweet, and I think this is what got under people's skin. I said, now that you disinvited Scott Ritter, wait until there's now going to be more attacks on other speakers because you've given off a signal of weakness, and it's just true, right? If they canceled Scott Ritter because of some internet trolls and because of some stupid article written in a conservative newspaper, that sends a message that all you have to do to get somebody banned from an anti-war protest, all you have to do is send out another do another hit piece, and then they'll get somebody else banned. Next, they'll get Max Blumenthal banned. Next, they'll get Jimmy Dore banned. Next, and I said, you can't do that. You can't give these motherfuckers an inch. You can't. All right. These people are evil. Okay. And I don't give a flying F about Scott Ritter and some internet thing and I don't care. I really do not care. I really don't care. I don't care. And you shouldn't care either. Okay. I don't think anyone watches Scott Ritter because they're interested in what he does in internet sex chat rooms. I don't give a fuck. All right. I just don't. I don't care. I do not care. And you shouldn't care either. The fact that a UN weapons inspector exposed U.S. war crimes, speaking up about the evils of the U.S. military industrial complex, he is very valuable regardless of whatever happened with that. And I don't care. I just don't care. I do not care. I don't care. So that said, since I don't care, I'm glad that Scott Ritter was re-invited to the protest. So Scott Ritter is re-invited, and that's great. I was getting ready to invite him to speak at our CPI thing. I figured, okay, if they're not going to have him at the actual protest, we'd give him a platform at our reception. We'd be honored to have him there. It looks like he's back on for the rally. We'd still love to have him at our anti-war protest, but I understand the speakers may have other obligations. But I was really glad. It's like, wow, he's back on. So then after that, I saw that not only is Scott Ritter back on, Tulsi Gabbard is speaking. Former U.S. Congresswoman from Hawaii, Lieutenant Colonel Tulsi Gabbard, is going to be speaking at the rally. I'm like, wow. Judge Napolitano is also speaking at the rally. Wow. And I'm just like, wow. This is going to be really important. Okay, I just spent the first half hour of my stream telling you all why the balloon was not important. And now I'm going to spend the second half of my opening remarks telling you why this anti-war protest is important. Folks, we have a theme on these live streams. I continue trying to explain to you all why things are happening. The breakdown of capitalism, the prolonged crisis of overproduction and the tendency of falling rate of profits, why we're in a long-term economic crisis due to the technological revolution and the computer revolution. And then from there, I explain that in a time of a capitalist crisis, there become divisions in the ruling class. The capitalists begin fighting with each other. Divisions among the capitalists become more acute as the capitalists struggle to seize control of the state and use the state to try and stabilize the economy. And that's called Bonapartism. Karl Marx wrote about that extensively. It is the natural political result of an economic crisis. When the economy goes into a long-term, deeply rooted capitalist crisis, the capitalists begin to fight among each other, and you have Bonapartist factions struggling for power. In the United States, there has long been a division in the ruling class between the Eastern establishment, the big oil monopolies, the Rockefellers, the DuPonts, the Carnegies, the Morgans, those folks, and the lower level capitalists, especially the military industrial complex. And I'm not the person who thought of that. That is not my own discovery. Carl Oglesby wrote a whole book about it. The Yankee and Cowboy War, Conspiracies from Dallas to Watergate. Before Carl Oglesby wrote about this, it was written about by Carroll Quigley, who was the academic mentor of Bill Clinton. He wrote a book called The Anglo-American Establishment, which I have a copy of somewhere. I don't know where do I have the Anglo-American Establishment. But Carroll Quigley wrote about the Anglo-American Establishment and how there is a faction among the capitalists, the richest of the rich, that are in with Wall Street, and they are in with the big oil companies, and they're in with the Council on Foreign Relations, the Round Table Group. You have that. In addition to that, right, Vince Copeland wrote this book called Market Elections, describing divisions in the U.S. ruling class. This book I recommend. That in a time of capitalist crisis, the divisions among the capitalists become more and more intense. And that happens. In the United States, the military-industrial complex and the lower levels of capital have been up against the strategic managerial wing, the Eastern establishment. And those differences intensified during the 1970s. They kind of evened out and slowed down in the 80s and 90s, but they flared up again in the aftermath of the U.S. invasion of Iraq, and most especially after the 2008 financial crisis. And there are divisions in the ruling class. The most powerful wing of the ruling class, which at this point has the upper hand because of Silicon Valley. You know, these are the folks who built Silicon Valley. It was money from the CIA and the NSA, and it was a strategic decision by the imperialists to make the USA the center of the computer revolution. And Silicon Valley is aligned with the Eastern establishment, with the oil bankers, the Atlanticists, the globalists, that wing of capital. They have the upper hand. And they think the way to solve the crisis is with degrowth. They want to drive down living standards in order to stabilize capitalism. Because we have this prolonged crisis of overproduction, they want to reduce the population, they want to reduce consumption, they want to drive down living standards, they want to grind the U.S. working class into greater poverty, they want to reduce the amount of production that goes on, and they want to solve the crisis of overproduction with a forcible degrowth. And this is called fascism, right? If you read R. Palm Dutt, right, his book Fascism and Social Revolution, which is a very important book that explains the process of a capitalist crisis, fascism and social revolution. That's what fascism is. It is an attempt to stabilize capitalism by driving down living standards, by imposing tight controls on the economy, by reducing consumption, creating a layer of the population that are reduced to slave laborers, etc. That is the method that the ultra rich and the higher levels of capital want to utilize to try and stabilize the global economy. However, they are facing a huge amount of resistance from the lower levels of capital, and that's who was backing Donald Trump. Betsy DeVos, she's a billionaire, she's rich, but she's not part of the club. Her money comes from the Tupperware, from Amway, the Tupperware selling companies, and her cousin is Eric Prince of Blackwater, which is the military contracting company. You got the Koch brothers and the fracking companies that believe in hydraulic fracking and are competing with big oil. You've got the owner of Home Depot, Bernie Marcus. You've got the Hobby Lobby, right? The owners of Hobby Lobby, the millionaire owners of the craft, store chain Hobby Lobby. Donald Trump's coalition, it was lower level capitalists, a lot of whom are tied in with the Pentagon and military contractors that basically were saying they didn't like Obama. They didn't like how Obama drove the oil prices down and destroyed the fracking companies. They didn't like how Obama was reducing, he did the Pentagon sequester. They didn't like how Obama was doing things, imposing environmental regulations, etc. They didn't like the Obama administration. So Trump came in as kind of the champion of these lower level capitalists, coming in to try and lift the restrictions of the Obama administration. And Trump was president, and he played ball with different factions. The FBI at first they were with him, and then they were against him, and then for a while he seemed to be in with Netanyahu and Israel, and he was always going endlessly to pander to Israel. He moved the U.S. embassy to Jerusalem, and he did all kinds of stuff to please Israel. Donald Trump was trying to keep together this loose coalition of people who didn't like the ultra rich, the lower levels of capital. And all of that culminated on January 6th. You had the January 6th events. Donald Trump left office. And now the Biden administration is in there, and they are trying to impose degrowth to stabilize capitalism. And there is still resistance against them. And I have always pointed out that it seems that the dividing line, and this is why I value Lyndon LaRouche, mind you. Lyndon LaRouche, despite all of my, whatever criticisms you might have, he realized in the 80s when he wrote There Are No Limits to Growth, this is a good book, he realized that this was the main point of division in the ruling class. The main point of division in the ruling class is that the ultra rich, the Malthusians, don't believe in economic growth, and they are trying to stop economic growth so that they can stay at the top. They're trying to impose Malthusian controls and impose degrowth to stabilize capitalism. And the lower level capitalists just want to make money. They don't care. They're not part of the club. They're not going to get to write the environmental laws. They don't care. They just want to make money. And that fight between the entrepreneurial bourgeoisie that just want to make lots of money and the ultra rich, the Malthusian ultra rich, the Eastern establishment, the degrowthers, the Anglo-American establishment, those folks, that is the fight that defines US politics. Trump was on the growth side, and Obama and Biden are on the degrowth side. And I have pointed out how important it is that suddenly now we are seeing anti-war conservatives. And that's really important. And the reason for that, the reason that it's really important that we're seeing anti-war conservatives is because some, not all by any means, some of these lower level capitalists are starting to realize that it is in their economic interest to trade with Russia and China rather than join with the Eastern establishment and trying to crush them. Usually these lower level capitalists are more militaristic. They're usually, during the Cold War, they were the hardline Pentagon guys. They were the hard right wing. Not anymore. Tulsi Gabbard is on Fox News all the time. She's an outspoken critic of U.S. foreign policy, of the danger of nuclear war, of regime change wars. She met with the Syrian president, Bashar Assad. She was in the Democratic Party. They pushed her out. She's going on Fox News a lot, and she's from she's a religious person. She's from a Hindu religious group. She follows one of the Hindu groups that broke away from the Hare Krishnas. She very much, has strong feelings about the trans issue, and she believes in religion and has strong religious faith as a Hindu. And Tulsi Gabbard, also, she's currently in the U.S. military. She's not out. She's not retired. She's active duty. She's a U.S. military person. The fact that she is such a prominent anti-war person shows that some of these lower level capitalists and some of the forces within the Pentagon are realizing that it would be better for America to get along with Russia and China. It would be better for them in terms of their profits. It would be better for the country in terms of national security and safety. It would be better for the country if we got along with Russia and China. And if you look at it, just like these lower level capitalists believe in growth, they just want to make money. Russia and China also believe in growth. In Russia and China, you have heavily state-controlled economies that are doing a lot to ensure economic growth. The Chinese Communist Party is obsessed with growth. Poverty is not socialism. To be rich is glorious. They are building up their middle class. They have a socialist state-run economy, but they are constantly subsidizing small business owners and computer companies, and they're building up economic growth. Russia is the same way. You have two state-run energy companies, oil and natural gas, Gazprom and Rosneft, but they are building up. They rebuilt their agricultural sector. They have bigger harvests and bigger farming than they've ever had in their history right now. They've got state-run industries. They've got, companies that are starting up. Russia is also a country that believes in growth. Nicaragua, the socialist country, they believe in growth. The success in Nicaragua has been their micro-entrepreneurship program, where they enable Nicaraguans to start their own businesses, to start worker cooperatives, etc. Venezuela, similar story. Venezuela, they're constantly subsidizing and building up worker cooperatives, building up small businesses. When I was in Venezuela, I went to a building in Venezuela called the Center for African Knowledge. And it's like a museum dedicated to Afro-Venezuelans and their history. There's a whole lot of Black Venezuelans who have African history. There were slave ships that crashed and the slaves ran away to South America, to Venezuela. And there's all kinds of Afro-Venezuelans. And they have this whole building in Venezuela, the Center for African Knowledge, that's dedicated to their history. But the museum is at the top floor of it. But all throughout the building is stores, small businesses owned by Black Venezuelans. And they've got stores where they sell brand name purses. They've got stores where they sell sunglasses. They've got stores where they sell clothing. And it's this whole building. The top of the building is the Center for African Knowledge, this museum about Black history. But all throughout the building, they have small businesses opened by Black Venezuelans. So the part of the world that believes in growth right now is the socialist world, right? It's Russia and China and Venezuela and Cuba and Iran and Nicaragua and all the countries that the U.S. hates. That's where they believe in economic growth. That's where they believe in economic growth. And they tend to have heavily state-controlled economies where the government controls the major means of production and the banking and the oil, but it also allows a market sector to flourish. The government has the responsibility to the population to ensure economic growth and ensure people are getting wealthier and living more comfortable lives. Whereas in the capitalist world, that's dominated by BlackRock and ExxonMobil and BP and Shell and Chevron and Amazon and Walmart, it's about degrowth. In the capitalist world, their feeling is there are too many people in the world and we need to drive down. They're trying to stabilize capitalism by forcible degrowth. So these lower level capitalists in the United States who support Donald Trump, what they want in the long term is what Russia and China and Venezuela and Iran want: growth. They want growth. That's what they want. They want growth. They want economic growth. And the people who are preventing them from having growth are the big monopolies: Amazon, ExxonMobil, BP, Shell, Chevron, Walmart. They're the ones that don't believe in growth. BlackRock, Chase Bank, HSBC Bank, BP. They're the ones that don't believe in growth. So Tulsi Gabbard and Judge Napolitano and these right-wingers, despite all of the anti-communism, despite all of the Cold War propaganda, despite, Tulsi Gabbard's a member of the military, they realized, for whatever reason, they realized that growth is good. That economic growth is a good thing. And because economic growth is a good thing, it is in their interest to get along with Russia and China and trade with Russia and China and Venezuela and Cuba and Iran, rather than be hostile to them, rather than engaging in regime change wars. And this is the beginning of the kind of alignment that could actually lead to the USA becoming an anti-imperialist socialist country. I want to show you all something. I'm just going to pull it up here, right? I'm going to pull it up here for you because Many of you may not be familiar with it, right? We know what the old Soviet flag looks like. Everyone knows what the old Soviet flag looks like. What does the Chinese flag look like? I'm just going to pull it up here so you can see it. I want you to understand this. I'm going to pull it up here, the Chinese flag. I'm going to pull it up. Oh, come on. Just trying to get a version that it'll let me put on the screen here. Just Chinese flag. Oh my God. I'm just trying to get a Chinese flag here that I can put on the screen. That's all I'm doing here. All right. Don't you love it when your computer doesn't cooperate here? I'm going to pull up the Chinese flag. This is so important. All right. Now we've got a Chinese flag that we can put on the screen. All right. So now I go back into StreamYard. And share screen. Share screen. Window. Aha. Chinese flag. Okay. There we go. I got a Chinese flag on the screen. You see that? That is the Chinese flag. Now, it's important to know what this Chinese flag means, right? You think, oh, it's, yellow stars, red flag, it means communism. Kind of, but I'll explain to you, right? So the big yellow star, that's the Communist Party. That's what that stands for. The Communist Party. But what are the four other stars? This is really important. Those are the block of four classes. Right? One of those stars represents the working class, the proletariat. One of those stars represents the peasantry. Another one of those stars represents the middle income peasants. And another one of those stars represents the national capitalists. Those are the four great classes, because when the Chinese Communist Party took power, it led what it called the block of four great classes, because there were four groups in China who would benefit from China breaking free from the domination of the Western imperialists. It was in the interest of the working class, the factory workers. It was in the interests of the peasantry, the poor peasants, the serfs. It was in the interest of the middle income peasants, right? The small farmers who owned their own land and hired people. And it was also in the interest of the national capitalists. All of these four classes benefited from China breaking free from the domination of Wall Street and Western companies. However, it took the leadership of the Communist Party with its proletarian ideology to lead the block of four great classes to liberate China. This is what's called the United Front. It's where communists realize that it is in the interest of the country overall, to move towards socialism. It will benefit everybody. However, only communists with our scientific understanding of how we can get there, only we really understand how to line things up so we get there. So we have to build a united front against the imperialists. And there's a block of different forces in the country that benefit from defeating the imperialists. And they're led by the communists. And that is how your country gets to socialism. In Russia, it was the workers and peasants. They called for a revolutionary dictatorship of the workers and peasants, they called it. In China, it was a people's democracy, or a people's democratic dictatorship. That's what they called it, the people's democratic dictatorship. And it was led by the block of four great classes. Right now in the United States, we are entering a period where there is potential for there to become a real united front, a real block of resistance to the imperialists. It is in the interests of lower level capitalists. It is in the interests of small business owners. It is in the interest of the working class to oppose the imperialists, the big monopolies. And it is our responsibility to polarize U.S. political discourse, to not be about left versus right, blue team versus red team, transgender versus a Christian or whatever. It shouldn't be what it's about. It should be, do you believe in growth? Do you want to make the economy better? Do you want war? Do you want a low-wage police state? And we should repolarize the United States. and build a united front against the imperialists. And eventually, if we can do that, it is in the ultimate interest of the overwhelming majority of the American people, whether they be factory workers, small business owners, even wealthy national capitalists who aren't, loyal to the globalists and to their degrowth agenda. We should build a block of classes, a united front to defeat the imperialists. That's how we can win. And this march coming up on February 19th is a step in that direction. It is a step toward the beginning of a united front against the imperialists, a block of different classes to resist the imperialists. That's why it's so important. And the left is determined to kill this march. I understand Medea Benjamin is out, Code Pink is out. I understand that the PSL, the Party of Sellout Liberals, the Party of Socialism and Liberalism, the Party of Social Liberals, the PSL, that they are trying to wreck this march and doing everything they can to stop it. The Communist Party is flipping out and they're against it. Why? Because they're loyal to the Democrats. They're loyal to the wokes. They're loyal to the degrowthers. And they're really scared. They're very, very scared of seeing a new alignment in politics. I have been saying for 4 or 5 years on these streams, I've been pounding my fist and saying, out of the movement to the masses, out of the movement to the masses. Well, now I'm telling you how important it is because it's actually happening, right? It's actually happening. Things are starting to line up in the right way. But if you don't have that yellow star in the middle, the Communist Party, where is it going to go? Where is it going to go? We're starting to have an awakening. Working people are waking up. Liberals are waking up. Libertarians are waking up. Conservatives, all these folks are waking up and realizing that the woke fascist agenda and the rule of the world by big banks and corporations is not in their interest. And it is instead in their interest to resist it and resist its wars. However, they don't know why. And they don't know what to do to fight it. What do we do? Just privatize everything? What do we do? Just get rid of all the laws and, have a totally libertarian society? What do we do? They don't know what to do. Our responsibility is to create a program, an economic program that could bring these people together, that they would all benefit from, right? And that's what our 4-point plan. If you go to the CPI website, you'll read our very short 4-point economic plan to rescue the country. That 4-point plan would benefit all these different people. So we are in a position to be the yellow star, the big yellow star, the Communist Party at the center of the block of 4 great classes. And we could lead these forces that actually want to break out of the domination of Wall Street and its degrowth agenda and its wars, etc. We can offer the ideological perspective to bring together a block of classes, a united front against the imperialists, to actually build a new United States free from the imperialists. We could actually do that. And of course, the fake left can't stand that. They can't stand that. And so that they're just determined to stop this march. Well, we got to throw everything we have into this rally. That's why everyone's going to Washington, D.C. We're official sponsors of the rally. It's going to be really, really, really important. It's going to be a really important day. This anti-war protest is far more important. Most of the anti-war rallies that go on are sponsored by the Answer Coalition, Brian Becker and the PSL, and it's a bunch of different socialist groups that are irrelevant, that have no base among the population, that no one's ever heard of, and they get together and they listen to each other talk, and they're a waste of time. This is a protest. This is an anti-war protest that is definitely not a waste of time. It's not a waste of time. And those of us who understand why the United States is moving toward degrowth fascism, why we're facing the danger of a new world war, why there are figures in the Pentagon like Michael Flynn and Tulsi Gabbard and others who realize that we don't need World War III, that is where we need to be. And if you don't like what some of these people at the march believe, that's all the more reason to be there, because then you can put forward your views. You can put forward your perspective. We're going to be there with our message, right? We can influence this. We need a united front against the imperialists. That is what we need. And this is the very beginning of it. And they're trying to get the libertarians to pull out. They're calling it a communist rally. They're going after Scott Ritter. They're going after me. They're going after Nick Brana. They're trying to get the libertarians out of it. They're trying to get all the leftists out of it. They're saying it's a right-wing collaboration. It's right-wing entryism and you'll laugh, blah, 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 blah. All of that shows you why it's so important that this rally happen. And they are going to do everything they can to try and pull this coalition apart. Already, they're trying to pull this apart like you wouldn't believe, right? That's why we got to give them our middle finger and show up. We got to be there and we got to support the rally. We got to support the rally, no matter what happens. And that's why it's so important. This is the most important anti-war protest that has ever happened in my lifetime. This is far more important than any other protest that's happened in a long time. There are protests that have gone on for a lot of issues. None of them pale anywhere in comparison. If we can start to see a new repolarization of the United States, a new united front against the imperialists be formed, this is where we're going to be. And it's not going to be easy. And there's going to be people there we don't agree with. There's going to be anti-communists there. There's going to be libertarians there. There's going to be right-wing conservatives there. There's going to be people there who don't like China. There's going to be people there who do like China. It's going to be a little bit of a clusterfuck. And that's why we need to be there. We absolutely 100% need to be there because the danger of a new world war is very overwhelming. And this is going to be the beginning. Let me just emphasize this, the beginning of a real united front that could actually stop the war. Brian Becker is not going to stop the war. PSL is not going to stop the war. Code Pink is not going to stop the war. This is the kind of movement that could actually stop the wars. This is the kind of movement that could actually stop the wars. But we're not just tailing after it. We're not just going to this rally and saying, woohoo, we love it. We do love it. This is great. This is a really important development. But it's even more important that we're there because we will intervene. We will intervene. We will bring a message. A little bit of a derail, but I've told this story before on these live streams, but it must be told. I'm going to tell it again because what the heck, right? 1963, there was a very historic march in Washington, D.C. It's called the March on Washington, March for Jobs and Freedom, led by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., right? That's where Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. gave his I Have a Dream speech. It was a very famous march. There were many communist groups in the United States who intervened at that march. Did you know this? There were. They all saw that this very important rally for civil rights was happening in Washington, D.C., and they decided to intervene in different ways. The Communist Party made a point of not publicly speaking in their name because the organizers of the march said that they did not want to be associated with the Communist Party. So the Communist Party was there, but they were not visible. The Socialist Workers' Party, they were there, and they reprinted a speech from John Lewis. John Lewis was a civil rights organizer, and he gave a speech calling out Kennedy, saying that Kennedy wasn't supporting the civil rights movement strong enough, and so he was banned from his speech. So the Socialist Workers' Party, they reprinted the speech that John Lewis wanted to give. And then they put a headline calling for a new party called the Freedom Party to break with the Democrat Party. But the Workers' World Party that I was part of for 8 years, I mean, this is obviously decades before I was born that this happened, but the Workers' World Party, they decided how they would intervene. They were only like 4 years old as a party. They were formed in 1959. This was in 1963. They'd only been around for 4 years. They decided how they would intervene. What they did at the March for Jobs and Freedom by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. is that they took the statement by Mao supporting the civil rights movement, and they printed 20,000 copies of it. 20,000 copies of Mao's statement supporting the civil rights movement. And they put a headline, 1/4 of humanity is on your side. And that was it. And they passed out 20,000 copies to the civil rights marchers saying there's this country on the other side of the world called China. And the leader of China is a communist named Mao. And Mao supports you. That was an amazing contribution. Imagine 20,000 people who went to this civil rights demonstration, got their hands on a leaflet informing them something they were never going to hear on CNN. Well, there was no CNN back then. Something they would never hear on CBS News, something they would never hear in the New York Times. They learned that China was a supporter of the civil rights movement. That was a great contribution. That was a great contribution that they made. Now, our contribution is not going to be in the form of a leaflet. Our contribution is going to be in the form of an evening event about socialism. We're going to have an evening after party. We're going to have a reception after the march is over at a nearby hotel, where we're going to have music and speeches and educational materials telling people about what the cause of all of this is. And at our event, we're going to put forward what the answer is. That we don't just need to stop the wars. We need a government of action that will fight for working families. And if you're a small business owner, you're a lower level capitalist, you're a farmer, you're a working person, you're a teacher, you're a nurse, you're a student in America, you need a government of action that will fight for working families. I was on a recent debate with Spike Cohen and Dave Smith, two prominent libertarians from the Mises Caucus who are supporting this rally. It was a friendly debate, but they were saying, government hands off. And I said, I'm sorry, Dave. I'm sorry, Spike. What we need, instead of a government that just sits back, we need a government that doesn't work for Jeff Bezos, that doesn't work for Bill Gates. We need a government that kicks Bill Gates' ass and kicks the ass of Jeff Bezos. We need a government of action that will kick Jeff Bezos' ass, kick the ass of Wall Street, start rebuilding America, building high-speed railway, building new universities for our young people, building new roads and infrastructure. We need a government that seizes control of the oil and the banks and the natural resources and reorganizes the economy to boom and promote economic growth once again. A government of action to fight for working families, not a government to engage in degrowth for Wall Street, but a government of action. A government of action that swings into action to reboot and rescue the economy from a disaster, taking control of the major centers of economic power, the oil and the natural resources, the natural gas, the banking system, mobilizing the young people to go out and build, give loans to small businesses, provide resources to help people start their own worker cooperative or their own enterprise, their own business. A government of action rooted in well-organized communities, rooted in an upsurge of participation among the population, people taking the future of their country into their own hands and being mobilized to go out and work for the good of the country, and enacting an economic bill of rights, the right to jobs, the right to health care, the right to education, reorganizing the U.S. economy to boom under the control of a government that fights for working families. That's what we need. A government of action. A government of action. And building that government of action would require the construction of a united front. There's going to be people in the Pentagon. There's going to be small business owners. There's going to be labor unions. It's going to be way bigger than any of us at the end of the day. It's going to be way bigger than this anti-war rally at the end of the day. For this to really work out, it's got to be huge, right? It's got to be involve millions of people awakening and taking history into their own hands and learning about socialism and 21st century socialism. It's going to require a huge awakening of the population. But this kind of march is the beginning of that. And it's getting out of the dead end of leftist politics, of You know, all of the socialists and communists getting together, hashtag revolution, you know, Black Lives Matter rallies where everyone hears about it on Twitter. It takes a selfie of themselves walking through the streets to prove how not racist they are. No, this is a break out of all of that. And yes, we're going to need an organization like the Center for Political Innovation, CPI, to be at the center of all of this, to provide the ideological guidance, to lay out a vision, a 4-point economic program, to educate people about how socialism is the answer. And 21st century socialism is the only way to have growth. And that, no, this isn't the socialism of the 20th century. This isn't the socialism of the Soviet Union. This is the new adjusted form of socialism that has learned from the experience, but adjusted to allow the market. And no, it has nothing to do with the stupid degrowth college professors who quote Marx. This is what they believe in Cuba and in Vietnam and in Nicaragua and in China. This is 21st century socialism, right? And we need to say, look, you know, the socialists here in the United States, they hate Russia. They hate Russia. They're the biggest bunch of warmongers you've ever seen. Bosch and ContraPoints. They want World War III. They jack off to fantasies of nuclear bombs. They love World War III. But if you go around the world, there's not one single communist government anywhere in the world that doesn't support Russia right now. Vietnam supports Russia. Laos, the Lao People's Republic, they support Russia. China supports Russia. Cuba supports Russia. They just built a big statue of Fidel Castro in Russia. Nicaragua supports Russia. Venezuela supports Russia. Every communist government in power. Belarus supports Russia. They're on the battlefield. They're militarily involved supporting Russia. Every communist government in the world supports Russia right now. So for these woke garbage who don't support Russia and want World War III against Russia to call themselves communists is an insult to our intelligence. All the communists in the world that are in power support Russia. Every single one of them. So these people that claim to speak in the name of communism have nothing to do with it. They speak in the name of the Ford Foundation. They speak in the name of George Soros. They speak in the name of Zbigniew Brzezinski. That's who they speak in the name of. They do not speak in the name of communism. You know, the working class people and the collectivos and communes of Central Caracas, who I met, who said that they believed they were on this earth to die for the revolution, Hugo Chavez, they support Russia. They want nothing to do with these freaks. You know, the people in Belarus, the communist youth of Belarus, who I met at the World Youth Festival, who love Lukashenko and are proud of the legacy of the defeat of Hitler and all that. They want nothing to do with these people. The communist youth of Donetsk and Lugansk, who faced bombardment, who defended their World War II memorials from fascists who want to tear them down. They want nothing to do with these people, right? The communists of China, the communists of Vietnam. These people, North Korea supports Russia. Of course, who can forget North Korea? These Western leftists that are obsessed with sex, pessimism, degrowth, drugs, suicide, depopulation, pornography, feces, slime, ooze, depression, hopelessness, ugliness, and art. Those people, they have nothing to do with what we're about. They have nothing to do with socialism. They can claim they're socialists, but for them, socialism means that they get paid to stay at home and use drugs. That's what socialism means. That's not what it means to us. For us, socialism is the 5-year plan where Stalin rebuilt Russia and made it a superpower. For us, socialism is Deng Xiaoping, the reform and opening up, mobilizing and building China up from nothing. For us, socialism is Mao and the young people of China going out into the countryside, giving their life to fight for a whole new China, leaving their life behind and going in the mountains to join the Red Army, you know, and fight for a whole new China. For us, socialism is Bolivarianism, and it's turning the impoverished slums of Venezuela into modern centers of construction with a state-run economy. That's what socialism is for us. Socialism is about growth. It's about optimism. It's the Soviet space program and Sputnik. It's the world's largest hydroelectrical power plant, the Three Gorges Dam in China. For us, socialism is building power plants in Africa. Socialism is inventing LED lights. Socialism is raising people up from poverty. Socialism is the people who supported the civil rights movement, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and the Civil Rights Congress and W.E.B. Du Bois. Socialism is women gaining the right to vote. Socialism is the struggle of working people across the planet to lift up their heads and demand the right to dignity. Socialism is the people living in the first world refusing to be degrown and teaming up with the people of the developing world to reject the international bankers and the big monopolies that are trying to grind the world into poverty and launch World War III in order to save their system. That's what socialism is for us. And I think that a lot of these folks that might be confused, if they knew about this kind of socialism, they would like it. And that's why we have to be there. And that's why it's even more important for us to be there. If we're not there, then it's just going to be a lot of libertarians. It's just going to be a lot of conservatives, right? Or it's just a lot of confused people. It's even more important for us to be there, not only because it's such an important demonstration, but because we have an important message to bring to it. We are the representatives of the global communist movement. We are there, just like back in 1963, the Workers' World Party was there to say Martin Luther King Jr. supports you. To all those black folks marching with Martin Luther King Jr., we're there to say the Venezuelans support you, and the Russians support you, and the Chinese support you, and the Vietnamese support you, and the North Koreans support you. That's what we're there to say. We're there to tie this important demonstration that says we believe in growth and economic development, not bombs. We're there to tie that to the global movement of resistance that they're trying to crush with their bombs. They don't go around the world bombing and attacking capitalist countries. They go around the world bombing and destroying socialist countries. Iraq was once a country led by the Ba'athist Arab Socialist Party. Saddam Hussein, despite all his flaws, it was a socialist country, and they did do huge amounts of development, right? And Libya, under the leadership of Gaddafi, had the highest life expectancy on the African continent, Islamic socialism. And we're going to have 50 copies of the Green Book, Gaddafi's manifesto, his official manifesto of socialism in Libya. We're going to sell the Green Book at the rally, and we're going to get people there to read for themselves Gaddafi's own words about democracy and socialism and the third universal theory. We're going to have the Green Book there for sale. We're going to sell people at this rally Gaddafi's Green Book, so they know what the United States did in Libya. This is so important. This is so important. This is so important. It is beyond important that we be there. This is going to this rally as the Center for Political Innovation, as socialists, is so important. So important. I cannot emphasize to you enough how important it will be for those of us who believe in socialism to be at this very important anti-war protest, right? You've been to one answer rally or liberal protest. You've been to one Black Lives Matter rally. You've been to Occupy Wall Street once. You've been there every time. But this is on a whole nother level. And the importance of our participation in this event in terms of world events and how we're about to have World War III over a stupid balloon. And it is so important that we're there. It's so important that we're there. It's so important that reception that we have after the rally be standing room only, that it be packed. You know, the hall holds 100 people. We ought to have 150 people there. You know, it's so important that this place be packed, the reception, and that our message be heard by people that are there for the rally. We need you there. We really need you there. We need you there. Let me emphasize this one more time. We need you there. We need you there. So sign up. This is the link, Eventbrite. If you're coming, please register so that we know you're there. There's ways you can donate if you'd like to help us out. If you can't make it to the actual event, we would love a donation. If you want to donate to the CPI, I'll have to get you the link for donating. But, you know, we have a donation where it goes to the official CPI thing, right? You know, this is my YouTube channel, my personal YouTube channel, but CPI has its own bank accounts. We are incorporated as a nonprofit in the state of Oregon. I have nothing to do with the finances in Oregon. That's all handled by somebody else. We'll get you a link to donate if you can't make it, but this is really important. It's extremely important. And I'm emphasizing how important it will be. I'm emphasizing how important it will be. You know, we need you there. We need you there. We're going to meet up in the morning. We're going to have a meeting in the morning for those CPI members from out of town who are there, get our orientation. We're going to be at the rally, spreading our political message, supporting it throughout the day. We're going to have people going out among the marchers, distributing our message, etc. We're going to have a speaker at the closing rally, Elizabeth, who is the CPI president. She's the president of the CPI. She was speaking at the closing rally. And then that evening, we're having a kick-ass event that will go late into the night. It'll probably go until like 10 or 11 at night. We got a lot of different speakers. Fox Green is speaking. Daniel Villa, the host of La Hora Latina on WBAI, is speaking. We got a great band. There's going to be a musical performance group. It's going to lead a lot of socialist singing. We're going to have food, and it's going to be a great event. It's really, really going to be awesome. It's going to be awesome, right? Writing it down. Because of liberal Zionism. So I just wanted to mention that. It's going to be important. So I hope that you will consider being there or supporting us somehow. So there you go. There you go. Those are my opening remarks for tonight. So hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the notifications bell, and I will start answering super chats in a little bit. Let's do the roll call. Names and locations. Names and locations. Who is with us tonight? Names and locations. Who's with us? Reflections on your debate with libertarians. Oh, very good question. All right, who's with us tonight? Names and locations. We got JT24 in Mississippi. We got Temple City, California. We got Tog in Dublin. Good question, Jenny. We got Colin in Greensboro. We got Riverside, California. Nancy Southern in Illinois. David Miller in Columbia, Illinois. Jamie in St. Paul, Minnesota. Communist in Canada. Dustin Schlesinger in Cleveland. Welcome, welcome. Edward in Kentucky. Nate in Chicago. Carter from Duluth. Glad to have you back. Yeah, still kind of getting over the cold thing, but that's why I'm drinking a lot of water. Cleveland Pirate Alex. Kendall in San Diego. Abel Malcolm from Milwaukee. West Virginia. Redneck Red. Che Guevara in New Mexico. Rice from Adelaide, Australia. Jenny Lynn in Cincinnati. St. David's, Bermuda. Yada Yisrael in Chicago. Auckland, New Zealand. Oklahoma. As men we belong to the land, and the land we belong to is grand. And when they say, anyway, Aaron in Providence, Rhode Island, Anthony Penza in Cleveland, Bob Troy in New York, Briggy in Pennsylvania, Florida, Bermuda Triangle, balloon rides, Michael in Houston, Heidi in Edinburgh, Scotland. Hit the like buttons. Zachary Brunch from Richmond, Virginia, Alex from Brazil, Gabby from Chicago. Who else is with us tonight? Anybody else? We got Hoax Weather Balloons in Canada. A balloon in the Montana cow pasture. Micah from Las Vegas. Very, 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 very good. But welcome. Mark in Mission. Ishmael in Los Angeles. Welcome, everybody. So glad to be here with all of you. Sam in Chicago. Welcome, Sam. Sam. All right, I'm in a mood tonight, aren't I? I think it's the fact that I still kind of have a cold, but there you go. Lexington, Kentucky, Randall Wilson. All right, Jamie from Hilton Head, South Carolina. All right, everybody. All right, we're going to start answering super chat questions. First super chat question is, can I read Blood Lies without reading Bloodlands? Okay, so that's a reference to the fact that Dr. Grover Furr, who is an academic, friend of mine, I used to, I went out to New Jersey a few times, met with him, a very nice man, very charming fellow. He wrote a great book refuting the book Blood Lies, or Bloodlands by, he wrote, Timothy Snyder. Timothy Snyder, who's the head of the Russian Studies Department at Yale University. He's a hack. I mean, and Dr. Grover Furr has just ripped his book Bloodlands to shreds. Dr. Timothy Snyder, he wrote a Nazi book, basically. trying to say, well, the Nazis were bad. They weren't as bad as those communists. And he wrote a whole book, it's called Bloodlands, Europe Between Hitler and Stalin, trying to make the case that somehow Stalin and his allies were worse than the Nazis. That's what the whole book is about. It's an attempt to justify the Nazis and Nazi collaborators during World War II. It doesn't directly come out and say that, but it's all about how, it accuses Stalin of every bad thing. And Grover Furr, using the Soviet archives and all kinds of things, he rips it up to shreds. He rips it up to shreds, wrote it down. He rips it to pieces. Yeah, you can read just Grover, or you can read both. I mean, I would never tell anyone they shouldn't read both sides. So if you want to go read Timothy Snyder's book and then read Grover's book, go for it. But yeah, I really think, it's really, of all the Grover Furr books, that is probably the best one, because it really just shows that this guy who's the head of the Russian Studies Department at Yale is a dishonest actor. He's just pushing anti-Russian propaganda. So there you go. Thoughts on Richard Nixon's predictions regarding the fall of the USSR in 1993. Let's put it on. Actually, I watched it the other day, but let's put it on. Let's put it on. All right, we'll just put it on the screen here. We'll put on Richard Nixon talking about the fall of the USSR. From 1993, right? Because I actually saw that clip the other day, and I thought it would be, good. So let's put it on, right? Let's see if we can put it on. 1983. It's after the fall of the USSR. Nixon's talking. I'm seeing all kinds of video of Nixon talking, but he's. I saw this clip too. Don't you hate the YouTube search mechanism? You can't find anything. You type what you're looking for and it doesn't come up. It doesn't come up, right? Because, that's where we're at. And it's really, really obnoxious. And it's like, I've seen this clip. I have seen this clip by Richard Nixon talking about the fall of the USSR and, and now I cannot find it because I'm typing it into YouTube and they don't want me to see it. It's like rigged, 92. Is it? I regret nothing. This is so annoying. This is so annoying because it's like I have seen this clip. Okay, 114. Okay, here's something. This is like a version of it. This is like a version that's been cut for TikTok, but it's a version. Wow. Don't you hate the YouTube search mechanism? It's like they're trying to propagandize you. They don't want you to actually find what you're looking for. They want you to find what the deep state wants you to see. It is so annoying. Thank you, Kieran from San Diego. Right? So annoying. But anyway, here it comes. I'm downloading the clip. We'll bring it in. We'll watch Richard Nixon talking about his predictions on the fall of the USSR. Wow, it took me that long to find it. I didn't even find the clip I was looking for. I found like a TikTok version of it. That's how annoying this is. The search mechanism is so annoying on YouTube. You cannot find what you are looking for. Instead, you find what the deep state wants to propagandize you about, maybe kind of what you're looking for. Really annoying. All right, so now I put it on the desktop. Put it on the desktop. Boom. All right, and it's Richard Nixon. Okay, hold on, folks. Here we go. This is Richard Nixon. Again, this isn't even the whole clip I wanted to show. This is just the TikTok version. So there you go. And where is it? I just put it on the desktop. Where? Oh, here it is. Here it is. All right, here we go.
Well, Russia at the present time is at a crossroads. It is often said that the Cold War is over and that the West has won it. That's only half true, because what has happened is that the communists have been defeated, but the ideas of freedom now are on trial. If they don't work, there will be a reversion.
Yeah, the ideas of freedom, he means free market capitalism, which was imposed on Russia, devastated the country's economy. The Yeltsin years were a nightmare in Russia. Their economy was raffled off to the highest bidder. It was a disaster, the privatization. The imposition of free market capitalism on Russia in the 90s was a nightmare.
Not communism, which has failed, but what I call a new despotism, which would pose a mortal danger to the rest of the world, because it would be infected with the virus of Russian imperialism, which of course has been a characteristic of Russian foreign policy for centuries. We begin with that. Therefore, the West has, the United States has, all those who want peace and freedom in the world, a great stake in freedom succeeding in Russia. If it succeeds, it will be an example for others to follow. It will be an example for China, for example, to follow, for the other communist states, the few that remain. If it fails, it means that the hardliners in China will get a new life. They will say, it failed there, there's no reason for us to turn to democracy. That's part of what is at stake here.
Yeah, well, he's seeing this from the perspective of democracy in the Western way. He's like not taking into account there's an economic component, right? It's just there's free societies, there's dictatorships, Russian imperialism, whatever. I mean, that's Nixon. That's Nixon, but someone asked for my reaction to that. That's what I said. All right. So any thoughts on Daniel DeLeon and his assessment of Tammany Hall versus anti-Tammany Hall? Well, I know Daniel DeLeon. I know very well who Daniel DeLeon was. Daniel DeLeon was the founder of the Socialist Labor Party, which was the first big socialist group in the United States. Daniel DeLeon was, he was an ultra-leftist a bit, but he was very key in popularizing Marxism in America. He was a little bit of a mentor and an influence on Eugene Debs. You know, he was a very important figure in the history of American Marxism. He was a college professor at Columbia University. He was fired because he supported Henry George. When Henry George, who was not a Marxist, but was kind of a left-wing economist, ran for mayor of New York City, he was a professor at Columbia University who supported him and lost his job. And then after that, he started the Socialist Labor Party. Yeah, that's Daniel DeLeon. As far as Tammany Hall, I don't know his analysis there. Tammany Hall is the entrenched political machine of New York City. It's the Democratic Party of New York City. That's why historically in New York City, a lot of times the better kind of people in New York City tend to be Republicans. You know, Vito Marcantonio, who was a communist, before he became a communist, he was a Republican because he was against Tammany Hall. The Democrats ran Tammany Hall and they were notoriously corrupt. You read about Boss Tweed and all of that. Tammany Hall was the corrupt Democratic Party of New York City. So there were various forces that were against Tammany Hall. And a lot of times they were Republicans, even though they weren't Republicans. If I'm not mistaken, I think Mayor LaGuardia was a Republican. If I'm not, you know, I think I could be wrong. LaGuardia was kind of a populist mayor. And I think he was a Republican just because of the fact that, you didn't have Democrats. But maybe I'm wrong about that. Let me look here. I'm looking here. Right. Yeah, he was a Republican. Yeah, LaGuardia was a Republican. All right. You know, Mayor LaGuardia, who was basically a socialist. He was like a Roosevelt socialist, kind of a social democrat. Mayor LaGuardia was a Republican just because Tammany Hall was so corrupt. But I don't know about Daniel DeLeon's specific analysis from that period. But, you know, I do know that he was in New York City and he formed the SLP. And what do I think about Citizen Kane? Citizen Kane is a movie. It was made by Orson Welles, who was a very famous like radio personality who did like movies and plays and stuff. He was a 1930s filmmaker and radio star and such. And he made a movie called Citizen Kane, which was a fictionalized account of the life of William Randolph Hearst. William Randolph Hearst was the newspaper magnate, the media tycoon, who was ultra right-wing and anti-communist. And so Orson Welles made a movie that was kind of showing the life of William Randolph Hearst, a fictionalized version of it where the guy's name was Kane. You know, and it was just kind of about how he lost his morality and how he became this very wealthy, soulless person, you know, who was based on greed and he didn't think about other people. It's considered one of the greatest movies of all time. But there you go. It's, you know, it's, I don't know. I mean, you know, it's along the lines of All the King's Men, which is a fictionalized account of Huey Long. It's kind of a thing from that era where they make like a fictionalized account of a famous person's life, you know, and it's like supposed to be a psychological dig into who the person was. Yeah, that's kind of what it is. All right. The Reform Party Ross Perot and Donald Trump. Well, the Reform Party was a phenomenon in the 90s. So in the 90s, Soviet Union had fallen. We were starting to see the beginning of austerity in the United States. Since the Reagan era, deindustrialization had been going. There was the farm crisis of the 80s, and Midwest of the United States, living standards are starting to fall. The labor unions are on the defensive and under attack. There's that great Roger and Me, Michael Moore's movie, which was about, what happened in Flint, Michigan after the auto plant closed down. And throughout the Midwest, you had a layer of unrest. Plus, and this is interesting, you've always had in like the Western states, Idaho, and Utah, and Montana, there's always been this layer of rancher guys who are right wing, kind of libertarianish. There was a group called the Montana Freemen. I think they're on the FBI's most wanted list, or they were at one point. And, there's always been this layer of like rancher guys out in Montana, Clive and Bundy, people like that. And they're kind of against the government, and they don't appreciate being regulated, and they're right wing. And so you had the deindustrialization of the Midwest that was going on. There's always been unrest among those guys out there. I don't know what you want to call them, the ranchers, and a lot of those guys are quite wealthy too. I mean, they're not all poor, right? They have kind of a working class aesthetic, right? Where it's like they're cowboys working their own ranch. Some of those guys are very wealthy. They own lots of land and they're making lots of money off their crops. Not all of them though. But they have kind of an oppositional, they're middle class, kind of oppositional to the government. They're like libertarian kind of. And based on the fact that the economy was it wasn't great, and there was starting to be lower living standards. The dot-com boom didn't really get going until the mid 90s. There was a level of dissension in the United States. And Ross Perot, he ran for president on the Reform Party ticket, and it was like, wow, we have a third party that's actually taken seriously. And he was this short guy, and he said, we're going to clean out the barn. We're going to clean out the barn. And he was just it was a way to kind of shake up U.S. politics. There were a lot of groups in the United States that were not happy during those years. The early 90s, and black people in America were not happy. And that was the heyday of Minister Louis Farrakhan. That was the LA riots, right? Rodney King was brutally beaten by the LAPD, and they had a videotape of it. So they thought, wow, finally, the black community that's dealt with police brutality for so long, they thought we finally are going to get heard because there's a video of it. But then the police officers who brutally beat this guy on video got acquitted. And so you had the LA rebellion, the LA riots of 1993, where these police officers that were video recorded brutally beating the hell out of this black man. They were acquitted. And so LA went up in flames. And then you had the Million Man March, 1995. Minister Louis Farrakhan had this Black Power rally, where it was supporting Cuba, and it was supporting Gaddafi in Libya, and it was supporting Iran, and it was supporting all these anti-imperialist states. And it was like a Black Power anti-imperialist rally on the National Monument and the National Mall. And that was a big deal. So black people were angry at the American government, and there was also the problem of deindustrialization. However, because of the way America is, and because it was kind of a middle class thing, right? These rancher guys, they were middle class. They were small farmers. They were owning their own property, very anti-communist, and because of the lineup, a lot of the way that among white Americans, the anger about deindustrialization manifested itself was with, kind of libertarianism. And in some cases, not very rare, you did have people like David Duke and stuff like that, white supremacist stuff. But there was kind of an upsurge of opposition to the status quo, opposition to the UN, opposition to the big banks among Midwestern folks, small farmers, etc. And there was a libertarian push. They were opposing gun control, etc. You had the horrendous incident at Waco, the Waco incident where, the Branch Davidian compound and David Koresh and his followers were murdered by bombs. And that was followed up. Then you had the Oklahoma City bombing, which was on the anniversary where, Oklahoma City's, it was the federal building was blown up by a Michigan militia activist. And there was a rise of dissension. And at that time, the main focus of communist groups was on supporting the Black liberation struggle during those years. Mumia Abu-Jamal was a political prisoner who was facing the death penalty. The Revolutionary Communist Party, the Workers' World Party, they focused on, the movement to support Mumia Abu-Jamal. That was successful. They did stop the execution, which was a huge victory. The Pope and, so many different forces around the world said, you just can't execute this Black Panther guy. He didn't do it. The communist movement was focused on supporting the Black liberation movement during those years. That was kind of where they were focused, and on the labor movement. The labor movement was on the defensive, and John Sweeney, who was a member of DSA, got to be elected the head of the AFL-CIO, and so you had the communist groups that were focused on kind of supporting the labor movement and also on supporting the Black freedom struggle. But there was this widespread upsurge that created the Reform Party, and it was populism. It was, farmers, Midwestern folks didn't like the government, were into protectionism and tariffs and gun rights and stuff like that. There was one communist group, and this is fascinating to me. There's one communist group that did support the Reform Party, and that was the New Alliance Party, headed by Lenora Fulani. And if I'm not mistaken, the New Alliance Party, they were really heavily involved in Pat Buchanan's campaign. They were I believe they were his running mate, if I'm not mistaken. They were a communist group. They were Trotskyites, and they were followers of Fred Newman. And they had kind of an out of the movement to the masses perspective. And so they joined the Reform Party, and they became big supporters of the Reform Party, and they aligned with Pat Buchanan. And they ran, if I'm not mistaken, they ran in the elections. The New Alliance Party, they were called. I'll actually pull up. This is an interview with Lenora Fulani of the New Alliance Party, and they were a Trotskyist Marxist group that they had enough sense to break with the movement, and they aligned themselves, and maybe it was the right thing to do. I don't know. The political climate back then wasn't as bad as it is now. Back then, you were still allowed to be a communist, right? Nowadays, you're not allowed to be anti-war on the left. You're not allowed to talk about anything but the trans issue and sex, right? If you talk about economics, you must be a nut. You must be a libertarian because only libertarians talk about economics. But you could still be a leftist back then. So that made it a little different. And that also there was a lot more open racism from some of these forces in the Reform Party. So it made it complicated. But Lenora Fulani is a woman of color, and they ran Lenora Fulani and the New Alliance Party. I think it was called the Independent Workers Party at one point. The followers of Fred Newman, they ran, and they were the one communist Marxist group that actually supported Pat Buchanan and the Reform Party. And so I'm going to actually play their. This is an interview that Lenora Fulani did on American television. This is the one Marxist group that kind of aligned itself with the New Alliance, with the Reform Party, and they've gotten a lot of flack for them. People, they were labeled a political cult, and Steve Hassan went after them, and all the typical stuff that they do. They do to any group that's that dares criticize the American government or actually get anything done. They were widely demonized, and it was like Freudian Marxism, where they were following Sigmund Freud and Trotsky, but they were also going to Cuba. There's speeches. I have a book of speeches by Fred Newman. Fred Newman presented himself as a psychoanalytical Marxist, and I have a book of speeches he gave called The Myth of Psychology, and one of them is a speech he gave in Cuba. So the Cuban government was apparently platforming him and was aligned with them. So I have some level of respect, and they did have an impact. They did, have a real impact on political discourse. So this was their candidate, Lenora Fulani, and she was a Marxist who supported the Reform Party.
A psychotherapist by profession, Dr. Fulani is making her second run for the presidency. She is on the ballot in 40 states and is qualified for taxpayer-paid federal matching funds from the federal government to help run her campaign.
And yes, you are right, Lori. Lenora Fulani was Pat Buchanan's running mate, even though she was a communist, a Marxist. She understood that the Reform Party and the populist kind of libertarian upsurge was the opposition to the status quo. So yeah, and that I respect. That's out of the movement to the masses. They had enough sense to not just stay in the left cage. So there we go.
Dr. Fulani, thank you for being with us.
Thanks for having me.
I'm just curious, what goes through your mind when you hear these speeches, these stump speeches from the President and from Governor Clinton?
Well, one of the things is joy at the growth and development of an independent political movement in this country. I think people are recognizing, Judy, that voting for either the Democrat or Republican this year is voting for an evil. The lesser of two evils still produces that. And I think the level of distrust and dislike that the American people feel for the two-party system can be seen in the surge of support for Perot, who's showing somewhere at 20%, in spite of the fact that his withdrawal in July really affected his popularity.
Do you think you're tapping into the same disaffection, disillusionment that Ross Perot says he's trying to, or indicates that he's trying to tap into?
Oh, absolutely. I think that it's my work, the work of the libertarians, of Dr. John Hagelin with the Natural Law Party and others who literally put Ross Perot on the stage in the debates. I think that what Mr. Perot has made visible are the millions of people in this country who not only feel disenfranchised, but have been disenfranchised by a two-party system. And I think the biggest issue in this year's race is the vote for independence. I think we need to drop the two-party system and go independent with a passion if people want change in America.
What is different about what you're arguing? As I understand it, and I read back over some of the material from 1988, you talked a lot 4 years ago about minorities in this country who were not given a voice in the political process. This year you're talking about deregulating democracy, among other things. What do you mean by that?
Well, that's always been a key element and aspect of the work that the New Alliance Party has done. It's clear to me that one of the most constrained institutions in this country is politics. I think that we need to expand the right and opportunity for people to get registered to vote. We should have same-day and automatic voter registration. I don't think we should just have an election day. I think we should follow suit like other European countries who sometimes have an election week, which makes it possible for elderly people, parents, students, the disabled, to get to the polls and vote. I think we need to support the Democracy and Debates bill that is being sponsored by Congressman Timothy Penny, which broadens the participants in the debates and lays out significant criteria for independents to be in. I think we have to open up our political process so that ordinary people have a say in how the policies are developed.
But to what end? What are you trying to achieve by doing this?
Well, one of the things is to impact upon the elitism of politics in this country, to bring the American public into policy decision-making. I think it's a problem that we don't know how our money is spent. I think it's a problem that we don't get to set the budget priorities, because I think who really controls America and its politics are big business, which have tremendous control over these political action committees through which they funnel money so that politicians dance to their tune while the people who put them in office are suffering. And I think that's one of the things that the American people are rebelling against.
You say in your, it's a book that you put out, a statement of your platform or whatever. Among other things you want in this country, you talk about a guaranteed job at a minimum wage for all Americans who need one. You talk about a substantially higher minimum wage, a free and comprehensive national health care program, a home for every American, a free education for every American from pre-kindergarten through postgraduate work. How in the, first of all, how much does all that cost, do you think?
Well, first, it depends. If we take, for example, the profit out of health care and have a health care plan as does every other industrialized country in the nation, in the world with the exception of South Africa, then I think health care would be affordable. Who says that drug companies should set the fees for medication? And if in doing that, they basically make it impossible for many people to get what they need so that they can make a buck. So one thing is that I think what it would mean to have that kind of freedom in America and these things as basic rights, we would revamp what they currently cost, and the profit would not be included in them. Secondly, it's kind of shocking to me that every time we talk about improving the quality of life for the American people, the issue that gets raised is how do we pay for it? George Bush found $1 billion a day to take us into a war that most people didn't agree with. At a time when there was an AIDS crisis in this country, we could have spent a good portion of that money to find a cure. So I think that we're brainwashed whenever it comes to issues that would improve the lives of ordinary people into saying, oh, we can't do that. The Congress has free daycare for its children. They have free health care, and they make more money than the average citizen. Maybe one of the places that we take the money from is these elite professional, polished politicians who get into office and then screw up our economy.
But do you really think that by closing down some of those kinds of opportunities for the elite, as you describe them, and you're also talking about, I know, a drastic reduction in defense and military spending, that you could pay for this kind of a comprehensive program? I mean, this is something that everybody would like to have theoretically, but having it is something else, is it not?
Well, one of the most exciting aspects of Perot's campaign has been introducing, for example, the electronic town hall meetings, where part of how I would see that is that there would be dialogue about what the American people want, where we want our money spent. To be quite honest with you, like most ordinary people in this country, we might have billions of dollars, as far as I know, in the economy. We just don't know where the money goes. So what I'm really talking about is a revamping of priorities so that the budget is skewed not in behalf of the wealthy, but in behalf of the middle income and working people of this country. There was a report this summer, I guess, that showed that the 80s was a booming year for the nation. Most of us did not know because we lost our jobs. However, 60% of the gains of that decade went to the top 1% of the nation. How could that be? What kinds of regulations or laws or legislation or protection for the wealthy exist in America so that we don't have a equitable distribution of wealth in this country? We produce a lot of things as poor and working people. How come we don't share in the benefits of this nation?
But so I hear what you're saying, but so many of the things you're talking about require a heavy hand of government in making sure that these things happen.
What else
and I
are
guess
they
my
doing?
question to you is what haven't the elections of the last several years indicated that that's what the American people want to move away from?
No, I think what the American people want is a government that functions in our behalf. I think they want to know that the monies that get spent in America include us as a priority. I think they want sensible people making decisions about how money is spent.
They want a government of action to fight for working families. That's what they want. She gets it, right? This is what socialists have been saying for a long time. You know, it's just the only because of wokeism are you not allowed to talk the way I talk, right? We need a government of action to fight for working families.
And what the deregulation of democracy does is open up the process so that can happen. I think this move towards independent politics is an indication that we want real change. And I think those people who want to see a continued destruction of our country should vote for the Democrats and Republicans because they're responsible for this economic depression, no matter how much smooth talk they put forward. If people
Wow, she wants to fix up the country, right? She says the Democrats and Republicans are destroying the country. She's loyal to the country. Imagine that.
If they believe in Democrats, they should vote for Democrats. If they believe in Republicans, they should vote for Republicans. But if they want America to move in a new direction, then they need to vote for any independent. If they like Moreau and the Libertarians, go for it. Hagelin, of course, Perot.
Perot.
Yes, I mean, it's so important that we vote independent. One other thing I just wanted to say about minorities.
All right, because what I want to ask you at this point, we've only got a couple of minutes left, is that, as you know, in 1988, there were, 91.5 million votes cast. Out of that number, you got 217,000. It was, less than, or a little more than 2/10
And I probably got 12 minutes of media. Last week, John Hagelin went on a national program. He brought a half an hour. 30,000 people called him. People are sitting around waiting. Again, I think that we're going to be shocked at the independent vote. And just taking a moment to speak directly.
But you're on, just to clarify something, in '88 you were on all 50 ballots.
Right, and now
this
I'm
year
on 40.
Now, why is that?
Because we made a decision to get on in those states, enough states so that we could win the White House, and that was not up for debate. But in states like Texas, my supporters are organizing there to guarantee that the laws change so that the requirements don't put the pressure of spending $100,000 on independents just to get on the ballot in that state alone.
Just quickly.
I just wanted to say quickly to the African American and Latino and women and gay communities that if in fact they want to vote for a black agenda or a pro-democracy liberal agenda this year, then they have a shot at doing that by voting for me as the only African American and independent. But to the people of this country, just vote independent. Don't give your vote to a Democrat and Republican. Don't vote for the further destruction of America.
Well, Dr. Lenora Fulani, we thank you for being with us.
Thank you.
All right, that was a blast from the past. That was a socialist candidate for president in 1992, Lenora Fulani from the New Alliance Party. All right, and I wrote down, I did write down, and we've got the video later to show from from Lori there, from Nader and Ron Paul. We'll pull that up later. There we go. But all right. The next super chat question I've got here is they're asking me what I think of the Cold War Channel and David Schroeder. I've never watched it. I don't know what that is. Next super chat question. A weird one, but that's okay. 2 major Jewish immigration waves to China. Did they influence the Chinese Revolution? I'm sorry. You know, that's like, what is that supposed to, first of all, like, okay, look at the Chinese population. Do you see a lot of European Jews there? You know, I mean, it's just like, this is like anti-Semitic, you know, yeah, the Jewish Bolshevik communist revolution, you know, come on, give me a break. Give me a break. Don't give me that, please. Really don't. You know, one interesting fact that I think is amusing is that apparently in China or in Malaysia and in Indonesia, the stereotypes about ethnically Chinese people are very similar to the stereotypes about Jewish people. So much so that there are actually some like Muslim imams in Malaysia and in Indonesia that preach that Chinese people are actually Jews. They're the lost tribe of Israel. So put that in your pipe and smoke it. You know, but you know, I just, you know, I've debunked the anti-Semitic, you know, the Bolshevik Revolution was a conspiracy by Wall Street. I've debunked all that stuff. So next question. And this is another weird one. Review the White Pill book by Michael Malice. Well, in order for me to review it, I would have to have read it. And I have not read the White Pill book by Michael Malice. I haven't read it, so can't comment on it. So, you know, I met Michael Malice a couple times, actually. He came to a protest I did around North Korea. He just showed up and was supporting North Korea. And, you know, so yeah, there you go. All right. The U.S. government thinks it taught China something by shooting the balloon. Yeah, exactly. Right. I mean, it takes a real man to shoot down a balloon. I mean, who'd imagine that like bullets could pierce rubber? I mean, yeah. Oh boy. Right. Next, Vosh attacks nationalism because of liberal Zionism. No. Vosh thinks everyone's a Nazi because of liberal Zionism. He thinks that everything is coded anti-Semitism because of liberal Zionism, right? He hears people criticize Wall Street and the Pentagon. He says, well, that's actually what he means is Jews. No, we don't mean that, right? The whole world does not revolve around the Jews, right? Every person that I criticize on these streams is not a stand-in for the Jews, right? And that this is how anti-Semites, this is how, I don't know, Zionists, I guess, think, right? It's like, everything somehow gets back to the Jews. Everything's a plot against the Jews. Anyone that they don't like, no matter what they're doing, they're somehow anti-Semitic, and it's juvenile. It's really, really juvenile. And I have a whole video about that. But no, it's not about nationalism per se. I mean, Zionism is nationalism, right? That's what Zionism is. Zionism is Jewish nationalism. So that's what it is. So I don't think he says that. I think that Vosh is hostile to any kind of populism because he is scared of the people. He's convinced that deep down, all the non-Jews are bloodthirsty anti-Semites who want to kill him. So whenever we get together, you know, if we start having a mass movement demanding healthcare and jobs, he thinks that, you know, if we ever get together, that means we're going to kill all the Jews. No, we're not. Marxism, you know, Karl Marx was Jewish. Many great Marxist leaders have been Jewish. Like we don't hate Jews here. Right. But in Vosh's liberal Zionist mind, he thinks in terms of the Jews versus everyone else. That's how he thinks. Right. He's a Zionist, and that's how Zionists think. Just like white supremacists, white nationalists think in terms of whites versus everyone else. Black nationalists think in terms of blacks versus everyone else. Zionists are Jewish nationalists. They think in terms of Jews versus everyone else. So when Vosh hears me talk and he hears me say, we need to fight the bankers and give health care to everybody, he doesn't hear it the way a normal human being hears it. And a normal human being hears it and says, oh, Caleb wants to oppose the bankers and have health care for everybody. He hears, well, Caleb's not a Jew and he's from Ohio, and everyone knows everyone in Ohio is a wild anti-Semite. So what he means is kill all the Jews. And that's just like, that's the delusional level. That's how these liberal Zionists think, right? Everything is interpreted in terms of the Jews versus everyone else. And that's why Zionism is a hateful ideology. And it's an embarrassment, to the Albert Einstein was Jewish. He was a great anti-imperialist. There's so many brilliant, amazing communists and revolutionaries and anti-imperialists of Jewish heritage. And the fact that Zionism, this ideology that is very, very bigoted, right-wing Zionism is blatantly anti-Semitic or blatantly white supremacist. It's Jews are European and civilized, not like those Arabs. That I mean, the first people I ever heard defend apartheid in South Africa were right-wing Zionists. So right-wing Zionism is just racist. But liberal Zionism is more this like victim complex, right? It thinks in terms of like, all of human history is the Jews struggling against the non-Jews. The non-Jews were all just a bunch of Borats walking around, we think Jews have horns and tails, and it's really unfortunate. And that they traumatize their kids, right? Their kids go to special, Zionist schools where they show them nothing but Holocaust movies all day long, and they just pound into their heads that all the non-Jews are just bloodthirsty Nazis deep down. We all just want to kill Jews. That's all we do all day long is think about killing Jews, and and so you can understand how, and of course the Holocaust is real. The pogroms that happened in Eastern Europe are real. There's, it's not like this isn't based on something real, okay? So, these people come by it honestly, but at the same time, their worldview, where they see everything in terms of the Jews versus the non-Jews. Listen to Vosh. He can't debate anybody for 2 seconds, for 2 seconds without calling them a Nazi. Why? Because that's all he thinks about. There's two types of people in the world in Vosh's mind, Jews and Nazis. So, I mean, it's just, he's seeing those Holocaust movies. They showed him over and over when he was a kid. And it's like, cancel me for saying it, but I'm tired of dealing with this. I'm really, really tired of dealing with people that talk this way. All of us who are not Jewish are not Nazis. All right. I don't deny the Holocaust. I don't support Hitler. I don't support anti-Semitism. Just because I don't agree with you, Vosh, doesn't mean that I'm therefore de facto a Nazi, right? And that liberal Zionist mindset, where there's a Nazi under every rock, and everyone who's not part of their elite liberal group is somehow on the verge of throwing a Hitler salute. That's just delusion, and it's toxic. All right, how do we push back against Gulag Archipelago? Okay. All right, wrote it down. All right, next question. All righty. Reflections on my debate with libertarians. Well, the debate I had with the libertarians, I thought that Dave Smith was just angry and defensive. I think he was so worried that I might make a good point and that might embarrass him. You look at his face; he's just so on the defensive, and angry. But Spike Cohen was actually hearing me. He had never heard anyone talk the way I do, because communists and leftists don't talk this way anymore. They talk about worker cooperatives. They talk about, you're a racist, you're a sexist, and I was actually putting forward serious, I sounded like Lenora Fulani on there, talking about a government of action that fights for working families, right? And he'd never heard it before. And for Spike, I think, and Spike, is more Black Lives Matter oriented. He's more, he doesn't pivot toward right wingers as much as Dave Smith might. So, I don't know. I feel like Spike was listening to me, Dave Smith wasn't, and it was a productive exchange. And it shows, I didn't think it got very nasty. It shows you don't have to do blood sport debates, right? I've done a lot of debates, like my debate with Bosch or my debate with those two Nazi guys I debated one time, where it just gets cutthroat. You don't have to get cutthroat. You can have a responsible exchange of ideas, right? And I think that's important. So there you go. I don't like cutthroat debate where it's it's an insults and you got to call somebody a Nazi and I don't like that, right? Let's have debates that are just I learn about your ideas, you learn about mine. Let's do that. How about responsible debates where the audience learns, right? It's not about owning somebody. The last thing I wanted in that debate was Spike or Dave Smith to feel like they got owned, right? That would have been awful, right? Because I want to see a coalition against the war. right? So if I'd gotten on there and it had been blood sports and I'd been on there, oh my God, you're retarded. If I'd made them look bad, that wouldn't have been good for anybody. Wouldn't have been good for me. Wouldn't have been good for the upcoming anti-war protest that they're both going to be at. Wouldn't have been a good thing, right? That this internet blood sport debate bro stuff is not good for building real coalitions. I think that was a productive debate because I got to give my side of the story. Dave and Spike got to give their side of the story, and we all went home and we all learned something. That's how debates should be. They don't need to be blood sports. All right, next question. All right, thoughts on AI Chat GPT? Well, look, AI Chat GPT shows that what I've been saying about the tendency of the rate of profits to fall and technology, it's coming, folks. The computer revolution is speeding ahead. Computers can do anything now. And because of that, we need socialism. Because under capitalism, your only value is selling your labor power to a boss. And machines eliminate human labor. And capitalist profits also come from human labor. Labor creates all wealth. And the capitalist can only extract surplus value from human labor. So stuff like chat AI shows that, that capitalism and computers don't go together. And we need a rationally organized economy, or else there's going to be a lot of people left behind and we're going to have an entrenched long-term economic crisis. Thoughts on police brutality in Memphis? Look, we are heading toward a low-wage police state in the United States. Living standards are dropping. The policing agencies are out of control. And that everyone feels it. On the right, they feel it. Their freedoms are being taken away. The government's cracking down on them. On the left, they feel it with Black Lives Matter, and they feel it on the left. Everyone knows it. And it's about time we had a united front against it. Not the left calling people racist, not the right calling people communists, but instead we had an understanding that the big banks and the monopolies and the ultra monopoly corporations are trying to transition us to a low-wage police state. And what we need is a movement of resistance, a united front against the low-wage police state. That's the way we need to look at these things. And that's been my message about this from the beginning. We need there to be an understanding among the population overall that the way the big banks and monopolies, the way the imperialists are taking our country must be stopped. And part of that is defending our freedoms. And you look at the police brutality, that's a great example of people's rights not being respected. All right. So Lori wanted me to play this clip of Nader and Ron Paul from 2008. So I guess we will do that. We will do that. Hold on. We're just putting it on the desktop and then I'll load it in. All right. I'm just putting it on the desktop. Nader and Ron Paul from 2008. I kind of, Ron Paul at the time, I didn't like him because he was, I thought people who should be communists were becoming Ron Paul people. But honestly, Ron Paul, the old guy, he's kind of cute, His son is a little less, compared to the libertarians and the right wing now, I kind of find Ron Paul to be just kind of an adorable old man. He's not hurting anybody. He's just Ron Paul. He's just a cute old man. He's, what's Ron Paul ever done to anybody? He's just being an old man, He's not hurting nobody. So there we go. All right. Let's see if I can pull this clip up. Okay. I can get this clip to load here. I don't know why it's being obnoxious. I don't know why the computer is not. Here we go. All right. Here we are. Here we go.
What's going on right now with third-party candidates. Joining us here in the Situation Room is Ron Paul, the congressman himself, and he's here together with the independent presidential candidate, Ralph Nader. Gentlemen, thanks very much for coming in.
You're welcome.
I tell our viewers, Congressman, why you decided to reject your fellow Republican, John McCain.
He doesn't represent anything I believe in. I believe what Republicans should believe. And I campaigned on that and got a lot of support, but I can't support somebody that virtually disagrees with all my positions.
What about Barack Obama?
Well, I don't think he agrees anymore. So, I don't see any difference between the two candidates. I know there's a lot doing, and you have to have a horse race going, and you have to talk about something. But really, there's no difference, and that was part of. We think the system is very biased. Our system doesn't allow alternative candidates, third-party candidates, but the debate isn't there either because they pick on little things, and the issues that we picked out, we hardly hear anything.
Because I know that. So is it fair to say you're saying you want a third-party candidate to win? Would that candidate be the man sitting next to you right here in the Situation Room, Ralph Nader?
No, Ralph is a good friend, but we agree on tactics and what we're doing, and we agree on these very important issues. But quite frankly, he probably wouldn't have joined my campaign, and I probably won't join his.
So you
campaign.
won't vote for him?
No, I don't plan to.
Who do you
I
want
plan to get as many votes for him as possible because it will take the votes away from Obama, and that's where we have the agreement.
So you want to stop Obama? Is that what you're saying?
Well, no, I want to change the system. I want Ralph Nader and the third-party candidates, all of them, to be in the debate. I mean, that's the only debate. There's no debate going on.
All right, so
this is a ritual. This is a charade.
Let's bring in Ralph Nader.
Yeah, Ron Paul was like a John Birch Society Republican. He's like a Bircher, one of the old right, hard right kind of Republicans who kind of reinvented himself as a libertarian. But I mean, I don't see him as a peacenik or, he's just a Bircher more than anything. He's a hard right John Birch Society Republican, and that comes with some isolationism, and politics is complicated.
What's your goal right now? You're not going to be elected president of the United States. You know that. Ron Paul knows that. What is your goal in aligning yourself, in effect, with Ron Paul?
Well, if we're in the president's debates, it might be a Jesse Ventura three-way race. But yet today we put together
3 presidential debates, but the Presidential Debate Commission has set a bar that's pretty hard for you to overcome.
Yeah, since it's controlled by the two parties, as you know. Today, I think it was a historic day because we, Ron Paul and the candidate for the Green Party, the candidate for the Constitutional Party, and me and Bob Barr agreed on 4 major areas. Foreign policy, get the soldiers back, end the war in Iraq, stop being imperialistic. Privacy, deal with the repeal of the Patriot Act, the revision of FISA, Military Commissions Act, and get rid of torture. And the third is the national debt. Deficits are now used for reckless government adventurism.
The national debt has nearly doubled over the last year.
Yeah, and the Iraq War is financed from deficit spending.
And the fourth issue?
And the fourth issue is the Federal Reserve is now a government within a government. It is totally out of control. Congress doesn't control it. It's funded by the banks. And we either have constitutional government or we don't. Because of this, well, here's the question. Is there anything left for the American people to decide about their country?
Here's what the CNN Opinion Research Time Magazine poll shows in 2 key battleground states right now. In Michigan, 45 Obama, 42 McCain, Ralph Nader, 6%, Bob Barr, 2%, Cynthia McKinney, 1%. In New Hampshire, another battleground state, Obama 48, McCain 43, Nader 4%, Bob Barr 2%. You know the accusations, Ralph Nader, that were leveled against you in 2000, that you stole the election in effect from Al Gore. He would have carried Florida if you had not been a candidate. You got 90,000 plus votes. In Florida, he lost by 500 votes. What do you say to those people who are saying you're just trying to spoil this election right now for Barack Obama?
I say 2 things. They're factually wrong about 2000. If you ask Al Gore why he lost, he'll say it was the Electoral College because he won the popular vote and it was stolen from him in a whole variety of ways before, during, and after election day from Tallahassee to the 5 politicians on the Supreme Court. Now, I have news for you. The last 4 major polls, when they poll Obama and McCain, and then they poll Obama, McCain, and they put Nader Gonzalez in the poll, McCain does worse. Does worse.
So you think your presence hurts McCain more than Obama?
That's what the polls say. And
what do you think?
It's explained on our website, votenader.org.
I have no idea. We have to wait and see. But some people say, well, you're going to hurt McCain. And I'm not hurting anybody. But I expect that there'll be as many votes. Maybe they will come from the liberals that will vote for
Ron Paul, you and I.
The 2 parties are hurting our country.
I want both of you to answer honestly. Both of you are straightforward. You have nothing to hide. Give me your honest assessment right now. Who is the lesser of 2 evils right now, John McCain or
what kind of question is that to ask a third party candidate? Like, that's so ridiculous.
Barack Obama.
I don't do that. Evil is evil. If you vote for one that you think is a little less, actually, you get tricked into that. You think that you vote for a Republican to balance a budget, and they're worse than the Democrats. That's what the people are sick and tired of. You vote for the Democrats to end the war, and they expand the war as much as the Republicans.
I'll rephrase the question for Ralph Nader. Who's the lesser of two bads right now?
The lesser of two bads is not good enough for the American people. We need the best.
But you agree, you've been watching politics all these years, it's unrealistic to assume a third-party candidate is going to be elected president of the United States.
No, we can push the two parties to address what's troubling the American people, economically, politically, socially, for their children.
So your goal is to get these 4 issues on the agenda, and on these 4 issues that you're talking about, who's better? Which are these 2 presidential candidates?
They're both bad on these 4 issues. The great constitutional questions about who's going to run this country in all kinds of ways, the people or the domination of the corporations over our government, are off the table for McCain and Obama.
One final question for Ron Paul. You say you're not necessarily going to vote for Ralph Nader, but you want a lot of your supporters to vote for Ralph Nader. Will you go out there and do what you so successfully did during the primary campaign, raise money on the internet for these third-party candidates?
Probably not, because it's tough raising money for somebody else. We're doing this for some congressional candidates, and it's not as easy as when you're the candidate himself. So I don't think I will do that, but I want to be engaged in the issues and try to push this country. But I really want the American people to wake up and challenge the system. You can't get on the debates. You can't get on the ballots. The parties are the same. There's really no choice in the system. We don't have good democratic process here. We go to overseas and fight wars to promote democracy. At the same time, we listen to these glib debates going on that's really irrelevant to these 4 important issues. That's what our goal is.
Which our majority support.
And we're going to focus in on those issues because we want to make sure that we get to the bottom of these critical issues for all of our viewers. Ron Paul, Ralph Nader, thanks for coming in.
Thank you, Wolf.
Some might say you're the ultimate odd couple, but I'll leave that for some of the commentators and pundits.
Talk to the American people.
We'll see what they say.
Check out the constitutional safeguards. That's the key here.
Yeah, that's a blast from the past. That's 2008. All right, I got one more super chat question here. How do we push back against the Gulag Archipelago? Well, that's a book written by Solzhenitsyn. And I guess the first thing you need to point out is that there are more people in the American prison system right now by numbers and percentage than ever were in the gulags in the Soviet Union. I mean, that's worth pointing out. Another thing to point out is that the Soviet Union was surrounded and barricaded and under attack, and eventually the Nazis invaded and killed 26 million people, and they had a war, to drive out the Nazi invaders that killed 26 million people. That was, a pretty horrendous war. And, a society that's under that level of threat and surrounded, it's not going to be as free and open as it should be. And I think even some of the strongest supporters of Stalin will admit that obviously what happened in 1936 and 37, Yezhovshchina, was not a good time. The Great Terror, a lot of people ended up in gulags who didn't belong there. But they'll also admit that those gulags were not death camps. There were no gas chambers in the gulags. Right? What Hitler did, rounding people up on the basis of their race and gassing them to death, is not what Stalin is accused of doing. I mean, no one accuses Stalin of doing anything like that. So you can't equate prison camps in the Soviet Union with Nazi death camps. That's just a false equivocation, number one. Second, there's more people in the American prison system than were in the gulags. And that also the Soviet Union was under threat, and it was a highly authoritarian society. And because of that, it didn't have the freedoms that it should have had. It wasn't allowed to blossom and be a free and open society like it should have been. But despite everything the Soviet Union was up against, they still invented space travel. They still raised millions of people up from poverty. They electrified the whole country. They built power plants. They built the world's largest steel industry. They did amazing things in the arts and film and music. And the Soviet Union, despite everything they were up against, had astronomical, amazing achievements. And that's what we can take from it. We're not trying to rebuild the Soviet Union. Right? The Soviet Union obviously had problems, and those problems led to its demise. They weren't able to adjust their system the way China was able to. But that pointing out that gulags were bad in the Soviet Union is not an argument against socialism, because there are horrendous prison systems all over the capitalist world, and there you go. So that's really all I got to say about it. All right, folks, I think that's where we're going to end for tonight. A new upsurge in the struggle against U.S. imperialism is now emerging throughout the world. Ever since World War II, U.S. imperialism and its followers have been continuously launching wars of aggression, but the people of various countries have been continuously waging revolutionary wars to defeat their aggression. While the danger of a new world war still exists and the people of all countries must get prepared, revolution is the main trend in the world today. And while the danger of a new world war still exists and the people of all countries must get prepared, revolution is the main trend in the world today. All right, everybody, we need a government of action to fight for working families. Good night.